Amen. Shabbat shalom. How many of you believe that you can hear and recognize his voice? Amen. How many realize that Abraham's journey starts with his ability to hear? I can't hear for you, and you can't hear for me. For you to walk the path that Yahweh has for you, it will require you to learn to hear and listen to his voice. Amen? In fact, a statement that's more repeated than any other by Yeshua when he walked the earth was, "He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit, what the Ruach is saying." Amen? How many realize that we're currently living in days that it's very paramount and important and significant that you know how to hear, that you recognize his voice? Things are getting heated up. Even the world is sensing something shifting. Things are happening. But my goodness, it's still relatively easy compared to what's coming. So if I can't hear now, how can I expect to be able to discern his voice among the noise and the clamor that's going to be vomited out on the earth? We have to learn to hear. Amen? This week's Torah portion is titled Lekh Lekha, as Shepherd John was already alluding to. Go forth yourself. And it's interesting to me because the Hebrew language, the way it's written, it literally infers, Abraham, you have to do this. He can't do it for you. You have to go forth. You have to make that step. And it's for your own benefit that you go forth. And so it seems that there's a challenge being presented to Abraham. Will he be obedient to first hear the voice and then to act upon what he's heard and make that step and go forth? Amen? It's taken from Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through chapter 17, verse 27. And Yahweh has a sense of humor because it's quite funny because it doesn't matter how the Torah portions fall. I always seem to get Lekh Lekha. I think this is probably the 15th year in a row. Regardless of how many weeks after Sukkot, the order changes, Lekh Lekha ends up on me. And so I begin to ask, well, my goodness, what am I missing? Because obviously I haven't gotten it yet. It keeps coming right back. Okay, I'm listening. I'm trying. But I love this Torah portion, and having studied it so much, it never ceases to amaze me that Yahweh has layers that you'll never get. There's always something there. There's always a message that he brings forth, and it's for this season and for this hour to direct your steps. Amen? Lekh Lekha, go forth yourself, focuses on the calling and the investing of the covenant promise in Abraham and his descendants. And when we look at this, you know, coming from a background where most people identify you as Hebrew roots movement, some choose not to be identified with that because of all the stuff that it's associated with. But immediately we have this an idea of what it means to come out. We have this idea of what it means. Oh yeah, that means to leave behind all the pagan trappings that we see in Christianity, and that means, yeah, we've come out, we've arrived. And yet when you begin to go and look, Abraham's journey has so much more than what we have attributed to it in the past. We find that Abraham's journey is not just a call to leave Babylon, but it's a call to the journey to your inheritance. And how many realize that the inheritance goes beyond the physical plot of land, which in itself is way larger than the little strip that's being fought over today? But that physical plot of land that Abraham was journeying to and he was being shown, that was just a physical manifestation of what Abraham was being entrusted with. It entailed so much more than just the land itself. Abraham was being entrusted with a covenant, with a promise, with an authority that hadn't been released in the earth since Adam. In Genesis chapter 15, verse 7, Yahweh connects this. Remember, he's told in Genesis 12 is where this starts. He's told to Lekh Lekha, to go forth. Well, in 3 chapters later, in Genesis chapter 15, Yahweh reminds him of this very same promise and statement that was made. It says, and he said unto him, I am Yahweh that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees. And now he connects it all together. The entire reason I brought you out, The entire reason you've been called out of Babylon is to give you this land to inherit it. The word inherit there, it literally infers that not only will Abraham possess it, but he will have to dispossess others that have been trying to attempt to rule in this stead. In Revelation chapter 18, verse 4, how many realize the same call is still being echoed all the way at the end days? In 18:4, we're told to come out of her, and he's specifically speaking to a group of individuals that are identified as my people. And we understand when we look at the book of Revelation, he's referring to the system that's called Babylon, which happens to be the same place Abraham is called out of. In other words, there's still a Lekh Lekha. There's still a journey, there's still a path that's waiting for my people to hear, be obedient, and fulfill it. And yet here we find within the life of Abraham the answer of why you're called out. Why are you coming out of Babylon? Why are you coming out of the world system? Why are you coming out of the bondage, the mindset that controls this worldly system? Why are you being called out? Because if you don't understand why you're being called out, what was the purpose of even listening in the first place? You're called out to access an inheritance that, according to here, this call in Revelation is still waiting for someone to answer the call and possess it. We find that if we heed the call to come out, yet don't understand the demands of the position of one who is identified as an heir in his house, then our journey is in vain. If you could go back and ask the children of Israel, the first generation that heeded the call to come out, that were given a promise, that they had an inheritance, but they missed the understanding of what it meant to be an heir. And they die off in the wilderness having never truly Lekh Lekha, having never truly stepped onto the path and the journey that Yahweh had for them. They would tell you, yes, that was in vain. We missed it. Well, let's take a moment as we begin to dive into this and examine the call that Abram hears. He's told, Lekh Lekha. It's composed of two Hebrew letters that, as we begin to look at this, have the power to unlock the destiny of a nation and open the door for the restoration of all of creation. Lekh Lekha. In the English, we read it as, get thee out. It says, now Yahweh had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred, from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show you. Well, this statement, Lekh Lekha, comes from the root. It's Strong's number 3212, yalak. And it means to go, to walk, to come. It's from the root halak. And it carries the same meaning. It means to walk, a manner or way of life. Abram is having revealed to him a specific manner and way of life, that if he will walk in this manner, that there's an inheritance, there's a promise, there's a blessing waiting for him at the end of this walk. But it's interesting to note that this word halak is first seen in Genesis chapter 2, verse 14. And it describes the path or the halak of the third river of Eden named Hiddekel. It's the only river, there's 4 rivers that exit Eden. It's the only one that's described as halak. It's the only one that's described as walking. So immediately when we see that Abraham is told, Lekh Lekha, get thee out, halak, begin this journey, begin this walk, it immediately points us back that this journey Abram is being called to is connected to Eden. Let's look at this river, Hiddekel, the one that walks, that halaks. Hiddekel is Strong's number 2313. It's translated as meaning rapid, but it seems quite a poor translation when you look at the roots of this Hebrew name. It's written Ket Dalet Kuf Lamed. The Ket Dalet root means one, echad, unity, to be united or to be joined to something. It's connected to the Kuf Lamed, which is the kol, the voice. The journey Abram's being called to is about being united or joined to the voice that is walking. And so now you can begin to understand when Abraham hears this, Lekh Lekha, get thee out. I believe that ensconced in this little statement that we see, oh yeah, leave, get ready to go, there's so much more that's being revealed in the Hebrew language. Abraham is having revealed to him the whole purpose is about you coming, joining, being united to the voice that's walking. And as you're united to the voice that's walking, this pathway, this halak, is going to lead you directly to an access point to Eden. Amen? You see, the blessing and the inheritance of Abraham was a lot more than that physical plot of land that Yahweh was about to show him. That plot of land, it's important, it's significant, but it dealt with spiritual gateways that were beyond anything that could be comprehended in the natural, that Abraham was to go and possess. Amen? Now, it's no accident that when we look at this river Hiddekel, the only one that walks, the only other time you see this name referenced is in Daniel chapter 10. Daniel has a vision, and he receives a message. And when you go back and read Daniel chapter 10, the message that he's given specifically is dealing with needed insight and answers. And he receives this vision while he stands next to this river, while he literally becomes echad, united or joined to the voice. And this vision that he sees, specifically, he's told this regards the latter end days. Why is Daniel given this vision? So that the seed of Abraham wouldn't be ignorant regarding the task set before them, regarding their inheritance, their blessing, and their promise. As we continue to look here, it's no accident that the second reference of halak, to walk, Abram's told to Lekh Lekha. The second time you see this root halak is found in Genesis chapter 3, verse 8, when the voice, the coal, alluded to by that name of the river, Hiddekel, is walking halak in the garden seeking Adam. For what purpose does the voice walk seeking Adam? The answer is in that name, to be joined, to be united, to become one or echad. The numerical value of Hiddekel continues to build upon this foundation because it has a numerical value of 142, and it's the same as the phrase Bekoli, to my voice. Lekh Lekha, Abraham, where? Bekoli, to my voice. Come to my voice. It's seen in Genesis chapter 22, verse 18, when Yahweh speaks to Abraham and says, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Why? Because thou hast obeyed my voice. Bekoli, you came to my voice when I called. Amen? Do you realize the voice becomes the door, both out of bondage, out of slavery, out of Babylon, but it's also the door into your promised inheritance. Abraham's descendants are charged with this same task when they're called out of Egypt. Where are they brought? They immediately are brought to Mount Sinai to meet with the same identity of the voice. You go back and the English would tell you they saw thundering and they saw lightning. How do you see thundering, first of all? But in Exodus chapter 19 and chapter 20, you'll see in the Hebrew it says they saw the coal. They saw the voice on the mountain. How many of you realize that Sinai and Horeb function literally as gateways to Eden as well? That's why Horeb, when you look at the name, it literally is connected to that same root, meaning the sword. It's the fiery sword turning each way. What? Guarding the way to the tree of life. Guarding access to Eden. Abraham's descendants were brought to Sinai in order to access their inheritance, which was above and beyond just the physical land they were preparing to enter into. But they have to have an encounter with the coal, with the voice. When Abraham hears the call to Lekh Lekha, to go forth, could it be that he's answering the call that was ignored by Adam in the garden? The first time we see the voice walking is in Genesis chapter 3, and in verse 9 it says, and Yahweh Elohim called unto Adam and said unto him, where art thou? It's amazing that Adam doesn't answer the call. And yet here, Abraham is told to Lekh Lekha. He's reminding him, there's a question that's been asked, Abraham, and this question hasn't been answered yet. But if you'll Lekh Lekha, if you will answer, if you will come to my voice, then there's something that's about to take place and happen that will unlock your inheritance, your identity, and your blessing. He asks Adam, as the voice is walking, "Where are you?" The term "where" there in Hebrew, it's Strong's number 335. It's translated as meaning where, but it's connected to the root ayin, also translated as where. Interesting, though, is that when you take this root, aleph, yod, nun, the aleph, yod means where. The nun literally indicates the seed, the word, but it can also mean the heir. Where is the heir to the promise? That's what he's looking for when he shows up in the garden, the voice, where is the heir? It's a cognate of the root, meaning Strong's number 369, ayin, which means nothing, non-existent, to negate, to nullify, or to deny. It's interesting that this term is first seen in Genesis chapter 2, verse 5, when Yahweh makes the statement that there was not, ayin, there was not a man to till the ground. How many realize that Yahweh's not ignorant of where Adam is hiding? He's not ignorant of what just happened. This question that is declared by the voice is emphasizing what's just taken place with the fall of Adam. He's emphasizing that something has been negated, nullified, directly connecting that Adam is no longer in a position where he is capable of tilling the ground. And so the voice asks, where is the heir? It's interesting because the word for ground here is Adama. And through previous studies, you know that the Adama is directly connected to the DNA or the essence of Yahweh. Adam has nullified his position as one capable of speaking forth the unadulterated, uncompromised word of Yahweh because another source of seed has crossed the threshold. And so when the voice shows up, he's emphasizing something has shifted, something has changed and affected Adam's position, and it's now become negated, nullified, non-existent. He's no longer capable of standing in the position of one who would be the heir of Elohim. And when the voice calls, he's unable to answer. It's interesting as we continue to look at this that Adama has a numerical value of 50. 50 is the number of the Yovel, the Jubilee. In other words, Adam was charged as the heir of releasing the shout of the Yovel. If you're an heir to the promise through Messiah, you're charged with releasing the shout of the Yovel. Amen? And yet here, as we connect the dots, what he's revealing through the scriptures is that you can place yourself in a position where you're incapable of releasing that shout, where you have nullified your position of one capable of tilling the ground, the Adamah. Do you realize that when Abram is told to Lekh Lekha, it's about being made ready to literally step into this position? Because not just anyone is allowed access. Let's continue to look at this. Where are you, Adam? Specifically highlighting the fact that he is no longer capable of tilling the ground. The word till is Strong's number 5647, avad, and it means to work, to serve, to labor, to perform a priestly service. But when you break this term apart, it begins to give us understanding. What does it mean to be a nation and a kingdom of kings and priests? Because priestly service goes beyond functioning in a natural tabernacle that we see that's been made with hands. What is the priestly service that he's referring to? When you break this term apart, you have the ayin, beit, dalet. The ayin means to see, to understand, to discern. The ayin, beit, connecting the next letter, it's a threshold. Your priestly service is to stand at the threshold, to see, to discern, to understand. You're a gatekeeper. You're a doorkeeper. It's connected then to the beit dalet, which means to separate, to distinguish. Why do you guard the gates and the doors? You're separating and distinguishing what's allowed to cross because you understand that whatever crosses this threshold means we're now in covenant. Why was Adam no longer capable of tilling the ground? He was no longer capable of being a gatekeeper. He failed in guarding the threshold. Something else crosses. And when something else crossed the threshold, it affected his ability to release the cry of the Yovel. The final letter of Avad is the Dalet, which is the door. We find that man is charged with standing at the threshold and separating, distinguishing that which is allowed to cross the threshold, literally, I believe, from the spirit realm to be made manifest in the natural. He's to function as the door for the manifestation of the presence of Yahweh. That's why he's there. He literally becomes a door to reveal the name of Yahweh upon the earth. That's why you're here. You should become a doorway for his presence. You should be able to say, just as Messiah did, who set the pattern and the example, this is how you walk. And then you'll be able to say, I have manifested his name. They don't see me. They don't hear me. They see him. They hear him. Amen? Continuing to look at this, it's interesting because the numerical value of this word til, avad, it has a numerical value of 76, and it's the same value as the Hebrew word mul, Strong's number 4135, which means to circumcise, to let oneself be circumcised. In Genesis chapter 17, Abraham is entrusted with this covenant. And yet it seems that right here there's something about Adam being able to till the ground, being able to function as a doorkeeper that's directly connected with being in this condition. Why do you think Abraham was given this covenant? Most rabbinic scholars will agree that Adam was created circumcised, and that it's only after the fall that now this becomes something that's necessary in the flesh, seeming to infer there's a direct connection between circumcision and having access to Eden, having access to his presence, being able to stand as an heir in this position as one that guards the threshold. When you continue to look at this root to circumcise, mul, it's the same root, just the vowel points change. The Strong's number 4136, mul, which means in front of. It's first seen in Exodus chapter 18, verse 19, where it says, "Hearken now unto my voice, I will give thee counsel." This is actually Yitro speaking to Moshe. "And Elohim shall be with you. Be thou for the people to Godward, mul, that thou mayest bring the causes unto Elohim." It's speaking of Moshe as the mediator between Israel and Elohim. And when you make this connection, the one that's capable of being a mediator and circumcision, do you think that perhaps that only one who is circumcised, and though it's dealing with the sign in the flesh, how many of you realize that's just a physical manifestation? He's specifically dealing, I believe, with the circumcised mind. Only one that has a renewed circumcised mind and heart, the condition that Adam was created in, is capable of representing Yahweh on the earth, is literally capable of being that mediator, that doorway, if you will, through which he can be seen. And we find that it's in this position that we're expected to guard the threshold, to separate what should cross from what should be cut off, because the enemy as well understands man functions as a doorway. Why do you think he was over there attempting to speak to Adam and to Isha? He understands they're a doorway for something to be made manifest. And yet where the Nakash is tripped up, only a circumcised man, a mul, is able to access the door to Eden. See, when he attempts to cross the threshold with Adam, and Adam chooses to listen and that seed gets in, Adam's no longer in a circumcised condition. He's now in a fallen condition. The state of his mind has been changed. But where the Nakash messes up is Adam no longer can even give him access to Eden. Adam himself is removed. You see, the whole goal is for him to get access back to Eden. And so now you can understand when Abraham is told to Lekh Lekha, the promise was beyond this plot of land. The promise was access to Eden. Amen? And yet access could only come and be revealed to one that was walking in the condition of a circumcised, renewed mind. Abraham is being tasked with becoming the doorway for the promised seed, the promised word of Yahweh, yet he is only fit for the task if he circumcises and renews his mind. And we find that once he's in this condition, Abraham is now capable of releasing the word that will cause the Yovel to be released. He'll see the Yovel, the Jubilee, the restoration, and the redemption as long as he stands in this manner. Now, continuing to look at this title, Lekh Lekha, it has a numerical value of 100, which happens to be the same value as Malal, Strong's number 4448, which means to speak, to utter, to say, to declare, but it can also infer to cut off or circumcise. When Abram is first called to Lekh Lekha, immediately at the start of the journey, I believe that Yahweh is revealing to him, there's a circumcision required, Abraham. So before you ever take the first step, before you ever make your decision that you're going to leave and regret it, he's already revealing to him, there is a circumcision that will be required of you. Without it, how can he function as the doorway for the promised seed or the word to come forth? It's only by standing in this position that it enables him to speak it forth, and just like Adam, see it made manifest. He becomes a doorway that's unhindered and uncompromised. We find that Abraham must first learn to speak forth the promised word, and then he sees the manifestation of the fruit of that word, the promised son. You see, Yahweh first begins dealing with Abraham with the circumcision of his mind, the way he thinks, the way he acts, the way he speaks. And once Abraham begins to learn this and walk this out, almost 24 years later, now he deals with the circumcision and the manifestation in the flesh. How many of you realize that if you've been in a season of things being cut away, removed in your life, literally the pruning process, if you don't understand what's happening, it can be disheartening and it can be painful, can't it? When Yahweh begins to remove things out of your life, you begin to wonder, what is wrong with me? Everything's being cut away, and it doesn't, in that moment, it doesn't really feel like you're growing. And yet, in order to have growth and to produce fruit, there must be a pruning. There must be things cut away. So if you're in the midst of your season of circumcision, if you're in the midst of the season where things are being cut out of your life, then just like Abraham, you're being reminded that it's because he's preparing you for what he has for you. And what he has for you can't be made manifest, can't come through a door that hasn't walked this out, that hasn't been circumcised. Only then can it be deposited and entrusted to you. The journey to your promise and your inheritance begins with things being cut away in order for you to become a doorway to reveal the power of Yahweh. Circumcision was the doorway for the promise to be relayed to Abraham. Circumcision was the doorway in Egypt at Passover. Not only were the children of Israel circumcised, but the lamb itself was circumcised or cut off in order for them to go forth. And circumcision was the doorway out of the wilderness into the land of their inheritance. Joshua circumcises the children of Israel and says, now, this day, everything, the reproach of Egypt has now been rolled off of you. Amen? Now, continuing to look at this command that Abram is told, Lekh Lekha, 2 Hebrew letters, and it's interesting because they're mirrored, they're repeated. Lamed Kaf, Lekh Lekha, you go forth. And all of this is buried in layers and wrapped up in this one statement that Abraham is told. The letter Lamed, it means to prick, to sting, to incite, to goad. As a shepherd might prod cattle to perform some action, specifically to move in a different direction. It also contains the idea of to tie or to bind something. And from this letter, Lamed, comes the root word meaning to teach or to learn. This journey is meant to teach you something. This journey is meant for you to learn. And there are times where he will even prod you and goad you to make sure, because he understands I have plans for you. And even though this looks good and I want to go this way, he'll prod you and he'll goad you. Why? Because the plans I have for you are there, not over there. Amen? This lamed is connected to the Hebrew letter kaf. It's the picture of the palm of the hand or the sole of the foot. It's directly connected with the promise of inheritance, possession, and authority. In Deuteronomy chapter 11:24, Israel was told, every place whereon the soles of your feet shall tread shall be yours. Kaf is your inheritance. It's what you possess. You have authority over it. Kaf is also associated and represents the latent power of the spiritual, literally the potential to be made actual in the physical. In other words, this journey, as Abraham is obedient to answer the call of the voice, is about him learning or being taught through the renewing and the circumcising of his mind to see the spiritual promises spoken by the voice that he's been given actually be made manifest in the natural. Be born, produce fruit, be seen. And I have here in my notes, wait. Do you mean just because I've been given a word, it's not automatically guaranteed? Do you mean that just because he spoke to me, that now I don't have to do absolutely anything else? It's a for sure thing. It's going to happen. And yet, this call, Lekh Lekha, is a reminder that this is about you learning covenant responsibility to access an inheritance, which infers that once this word is released, there's a responsibility on your part. Abraham had to get up and walk the land. Abraham had to get up and get out of Babylon. Abraham had to circumcise not only himself, but his entire household if he wanted to see that word be made manifest in his life. You're the doorway through which the word of Yahweh is released upon the earth. You should be following and acting in the footsteps of Messiah. And in fact, in Philippians chapter 2, verse 5, we're told, let this mind that was in Messiah be in you. And we find that just like with Adam, if our mind is not in that condition, if we do not have the mind of Mashiach, if instead our mind is found in a fallen, uncircumcised, compromised condition, then it seems that we are incapable of seeing that word produce anything other than a GMO, genetically modified version of what it was supposed to be. We're unable to till the ground, to avad, to guard the adamah, the sanctity of the released word. And now you can understand why Abram is commanded to Lekh Lekha. He must not only answer the voice and learn to hear and recognize the voice from all others, but he also must circumcise his own mind to become a doorway for the promises spoken by that voice to be seen and made manifest on the earth. Amen. And as we said earlier, Abram leaves at 75. He's 75 years old when he is obedient to Lekh Lekha. The start of his journey deals with his mind becoming renewed or circumcised, and it's not until he's 99, 24 years later, that it's now made manifest in his flesh with the physical circumcision. And when it's made manifest in his flesh, it's followed by the birth of Isaac. How many realize that there's a season of time where the spiritual promises and words that you've been given, there's a journey where you have to be taught. You have to learn what it means to be an heir to that promise. And at the end of that journey, the promise that had all of the potential, it had all of the ability to be made manifest. Now, once you're ready to be the doorway for it, it's made manifest in the natural. Amen? Now, continuing to look, 100 is also the value of the Hebrew letter kuf, which represents the back of the head. Once again, seeming to infer, remember 100 is the value of to circumcise, that is dealing with the circumcision, a renewal of the mind. The idea of the kuf being what follows after or behind. But it's interesting because the ancient Hebrew rendering of this letter kuf looks quite different than our modern Hebrew letter. If you'll see, it's the circle with the line directly through the middle, and it's the picture of the sun at the horizon in the sense of a revolution of the sun, therefore associated with time, a revolution of a circle, as well as to condense, just as the light gathers at the sun when it is at the horizon. And so when we see this embedded in the Hebrew language, Lekh Lekha, could it be then that Abraham is having revealed to him literally the circuit of the sun, There's something that Abraham is being given insight regarding that's not only going to affect his journey, but it's going to set the course of his house if he can understand it. Amen? Remember, this revolution of the sun is directly associated with time. It seems Abraham is being given insight into the clock of Yahweh, which all of creation is governed by. We find that the sun also plays a role in the Moedim, the seasons, the set appointed times. It seems in that Abraham, my goodness, when he's told to Lekh Lekha, he's being given a form of a compass, a clock, a calendar. Why? Because this is what's going to direct the course of your house, Abraham. In Psalms chapter 19, verses 5 and 6, it says this about the circuit of the sun, which is a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heavens, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. And when you read the rest of Psalms, you'll find that the circuit of the sun, as it passes through the 12 zodiacal houses or constellations, it's literally there, and as it's passing through, as it's making its circuit, it's revealing set times and seasons. And we also understand that it's declaring the salvation message written at creation in those constellational signs. So we find that when Abram's told to Lekh Lekha, and he's being given this understanding, it seems that Abram's being shown the salvation message of Yahweh, as well as being given key information regarding the times to chart the course of his house, as he is called to Lekh Lekha. And remember, this letter Kuf can also mean literally to condense or be gathered. Do you see the picture of what's taking place? It seems to infer that this message that's written within the heavenlies, that the sun is revealing as it makes its circuit, that message is about to be condensed, gathered, deposited, and carried within Abram's house. It's no accident that Israel, the seed of Abraham, is composed of 12 tribes. Do you think perhaps it's to make us understand the message a little bit better, a little bit clearer? 12 tribes corresponding to the 12 constellational houses and the 12 months on the calendar. Israel literally becomes the clock, the timepiece. Israel contains the message. You're the key. This is why Israel is scattered. You've been hidden among the nations. Why? To preserve the message. Because there's one coming that seeks to change the message, that seeks to change the times and the seasons and to pervert the celestial clock. But y'all, that's okay, that's fine. You know what? You go do your thing, do whatever you want, because the message has already been condensed and deposited within the seed of Abraham, who is carrying this message. And since they function as a doorkeeper, as long as they're in this stead of a doorkeeper, this message will not be perverted or contaminated. Amen? In Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 18, insight is given in regards to the role of the lights, the sun being one of them, placed here. We're told that they function to reveal signs, oat. Remember that, because we're going to look at other oat. And they also reveal seasons, moedim. The moedim is the Hebrew word that we get the term feasts from, the feasts and festivals. It specifically literally means an appointed place, time, or meeting. Now you understand why the feasts and festivals, the Shabbat being the most repeated, is important. It's an appointed place. It's an appointed time. It's an appointed meeting. Do you want to be able to chart the course of your house? Do you want to have understanding in the days ahead and the path that you should take and the decisions you should make? Be it the moedim. The moedim literally reveal doorways to his throne room. But they are also said, these lights, to rule over the day and night and to divide light from darkness. Well, let's look at this, because this is the pattern that Abraham's being shown. And it's not just showing from the natural how they function to set the calendar of our world, but it's also showing, I believe, the same role that they have, the same charge that they're given. Abraham, this is what's being deposited in you. So you need to understand their function. You need to understand that they reveal signs, they reveal seasons, the moedim. They're charged with the moedim. You need to understand that they rule and they divide. Let's look at the term for rule. It's Strong's number 4910, mashal, and it means to rule, to have dominion, to reign. It's a cognate of another Hebrew word, mashal, and this term means an oracle, a parable, or a prophetic utterance. And then it says that they divide light from darkness. The term divide, it's Strong's number 914, badal, and it means to divide, to separate, to distinguish, or to select. In other words, as the sun shines and makes its circuit across the sky, it rules and has dominion over the prophetic utterances being declared, separating and distinguishing the set times of access to the presence of Yahweh, functioning to guard access to his throne room, functioning as the heavenly clock orchestrated by the hand and the mind of Yahweh. And this, I believe, is what's literally just being downloaded into Abram. He's not just told, oh, by the way, Abraham, I want you to take a trip. You need to leave. You need to get out of your father's house. Leave all this behind. And I know you haven't seen this place, but this is where I'm sending you to. But Abraham's being shown so much more than that goes beyond and outside of what he will ever even see in his natural life. He's setting the course of his house for generations all the way until the latter end days. He's shown this celestial clock. He's shown the function of how it distinguishes, it separates, it guards access to the throne of Yahweh, and it rules and it has dominion, and it declares a prophetic utterance. I believe Adam was given key insight as well in regards to this heavenly timepiece, and he's charged with guarding those doorways. He's to avad the Adamah. He's to be a doorkeeper. And simultaneously, while he is functioning to guard the access and the doorway to Yahweh, simultaneously, he's to be a doorway or a mouthpiece for the message in the heavenlies to be made manifest on the earth. And as Adam declares the message that's been written in the heavenlies, he too will walk in dominion and authority. And now we find that Abraham is charged with this same task. It's literally being gathered, condensed, and deposited into Abraham. Now, looking further at the form of this ancient Hebrew letter, it's no accident that it also resembles the full picture of the rainbow. Pastor David wrote an entire book about this. The rainbow is not just an arch like we see, but it's a full circle. And it's literally this letter, the ancient letter Kuf, not only is it the picture of the sun on the horizon, but it literally also looks as if it's the picture of the rainbow. That you only see the arch because the horizon cuts it in half and we don't see the full circle. It's blocked by the horizon. Do you realize the rainbow is not only a sign of the covenant promise, but it's also directly connected to the throne of Yahweh as well? Abraham is being given preview information regarding the covenant promises of Yahweh. Simultaneously, he's being revealed to them of how he can have access to his throne room. In Revelation 4:3, speaking of the throne room, it says, and there was a rainbow round about the throne. And so now you can begin to understand, my goodness, why was Noah shown this? Why was Noah shown a rainbow in the clouds? And that's the promise. It wasn't just, wow, look at the pretty colors. That's nice. That makes me feel good. Thank you for remembering me. It was literally showing Noah, there's access to my throne room. Noah, there's a doorway that you can have access to. And now we find that same promise is being revealed to Abraham. If this is the case, if all of this is encapsulated in the call for Abraham to go forth, remember in Genesis chapter 15, verse 5, Abraham is commanded to tell the stars, if thou be able to number them, and he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. And we've looked at this countless times that this command, it was a challenge, not about physically numbering the stars, but the Hebrew term there is safar, to literally read and declare the message that was written within. This is Yahweh's response when Abraham starts to question, I Lekh Lekha. I'm on this journey. I've been doing this. I've been walking this out, but I still have not seen the manifestation of that promise. How does Yahweh respond to him? He reminds Abraham of his covenant responsibilities. You're the door. You declare it. This is Yahweh's answer when Abraham questions his promise and his inheritance. He reminds him, read the message. Remember, it's your responsibility to release it, to be the doorway, Abraham. There are times when you're on this journey when it's been a while. For some of you, you've been given a promise and maybe it's been years in the making, and sometimes it's easy to forget and we just want to complain. And we just want to ask, okay, Yahweh, when already? I've been walking this out. I've been doing this. When is it coming? His answer is the same. You're supposed to be the doorway for it. You declare it. You release it. Remember, you read it. Amen? We find that when Yahweh instructs Abraham to do this, it wasn't a new concept. Abraham fully understood what he was being reminded of. This was a reminder of the message he was first given. It's no accident then that Yahweh follows this command up with reminding him of the first time he called him. Verse 5, he tells him, read the message, Abraham, so far. If you can read it, if you'll declare it, if you'll be the doorway that you're meant and supposed to be, then so shall your seed be. It will be made manifest on the earth. And in verse 7, he follows this up with the declaration, I am Yahweh that brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land to inherit it. He reminds him all the way back when I first told you to Lekh Lekha, Abram. Amen? Now let's look at the term for rainbow. If all of this is encapsulating what Abram's being shown, not only is he being shown the message within the heavenlies, the clock and the timepiece of Yahweh, but it's also connected to the rainbow. Let's look at the Hebrew term for rainbow. It's Strong's number 7198, keshet. It's translated as meaning a bow, used metaphorically for strength and power. Notice the way it's written in the Hebrew. It's kuf, shin, tav. It begins with the Hebrew letter kuf, further connecting the symbolism of that ancient Hebrew letter kuf being the picture of the rainbow. Attached to the kuf is the shin, tav root. The shin, tav root in Hebrew infers a garment. Perhaps when Noah is shown the rainbow, the cheshet, it's literally alluding, I believe, to the very garment that Adam was clothed with. It's the garment of the fiery light of Yahweh that Adam is naked of upon his compromise and fall. Why? He's piecing and connecting the dots together. As long as Adam was clothed with this garment, he had access to the mind of Yahweh. He had access literally to the throne room of Yahweh. And the reason he had access, he was to be a doorway for the purpose of revealing and now coming and declaring it to all of creation. So Noah is shown this garment. Noah, see this garment. If you are clothed in this garment, you too will have access to the mind of Yahweh. You'll have access to the throne room. You'll have access and you'll be capable of becoming a doorway to release the word of Yahweh upon the earth and see it set free and see creation flourish. Amen? So we find that Noah is shown this same garment or rainbow upon exiting the ark. In Genesis chapter 9, verse 13 and 14, it says, I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. Let's look at the word for token. It said that this is a token of the covenant. The word token is Strong's number 226, ot. Remember, the sun and the luminaries also function to reveal ot. Signs, signals, a distinguishing mark. It's interesting because circumcision is also identified as an ot, a sign, a signal, a distinguishing mark, as well as the purpose of the other luminaries in the heavens. They are for signs, they are for ot. I realize they can't be separated one from another. Each of these specific ot that's being revealed has something to do with connecting the dots for you to understand your position as an heir, your access point to his throne room. The Shabbat is also an ot. Now let's look at this. Let's break down, what does it mean to be a distinguishing mark, a signal, a sign? It's from the root meaning to consent or agree. The word picture, however, is quite interesting because ot is written in the Hebrew aleph, vav, tav. Notice Aleph Tav and the Vav, literally a connector. It's the connection point between you and the Aleph Tav, the one who has the mind of Yahweh, the mind of Mashiach. This is your connecting point, these ot, these signs. In the Hebrew, when you break it down, you have the Aleph, which represents as the picture of an ox. The Vav means to be harnessed, to be joined, to connect, to be connected. And then it seems as if this ox is now harnessed to a plow in order to head towards a distant landmark. Tav can indicate a distant landmark on the horizon. And the reason the ox is harnessed to a plow is in order to keep the furrows straight, to make sure he doesn't wander off, that this was the set destination, but without being connected to that sign, to that oat, that ox may have a tendency to end up way over here, and he's not at the set destination at the set time for whatever's about to be released. That's what the oat are for. The meaning of consent, the root of it comes from making a covenant where both parties arrive at an agreed upon destination. Just like the ox arrives at the destination, the landmark when plowing. These tokens, these oat, are all for the purpose of ensuring that you're able to keep on the straight path and arrive at your agreed upon destination. That's their purpose. They act as a clock, a compass, to direct the affairs of your house. How many realize that it doesn't matter what devastation may be going on around you, you're able to set your course. Amen? How many realize that if there was ever a generation that needed to have this understanding, it's this generation? You need to be able to set the course of your house. Because if you're unable to set the course of your house, if you're unable to direct the affairs and make sure you're on the straight path, you're going to end up in a train wreck. It will not be pretty, and yet that's why he reminds you, I've given you oat. What are these oat? They're access points that you would have access to the mind of Mashiach so that you could walk in understanding and discernment, that you would be able to not only walk in that understanding and discernment, but in turn, you would literally become a doorway to release it and speak it forth into the lives of others so that they too could understand that's the landmark. That's the destination. Amen? Each one functions or reveals a gateway into the presence of Yahweh. And yet from the very beginning with the connections we were looking at with Adam and then with Abraham, circumcision becomes the key. Without a circumcised mind, you can't decipher their message. Without a circumcised mind, you can't function as one that's the gatekeeper. Without a circumcised mind, you can't put on these garments that will give you access into his presence. Now, continuing to look at this, the numerical value of oat equals 407. It's the same value as Teva, the ark. Noah exits the ark, a physical manifestation of the refuge and sanctuary of Yahweh that was capable of walking Yalak upon the waters of chaos in Genesis chapter 7:18 towards a set destination, and he then is immediately shown the oat, the covenant sign of the rainbow, reminding Noah that there's a garment available to be put on. There's a doorway that would enable him to have access to Yahweh, to gain insight regarding the direction of his house. And if he would be obedient to put on that garment, if he would be obedient to allow his mind to be renewed, to be circumcised, to be cleansed, to take on the mind of Mashiach, Noah would become a walking teva. He would become an ark. He would become a refuge. Amen? We find that this oat, this rainbow, this oat, the token of the covenant, Yahweh makes a statement that when I bring a cloud over the earth, the bow shall be seen in the cloud. So we need to look at the term cloud. It's Strong's number 6049, anan, and it means to make, produce, appear, or to bring clouds. Breaking this word apart, however, in the Hebrew language, you have the letter ayin, which means to see or to behold. Ayin in itself literally functions as a doorway or a womb, something that something can be drawn out of. Connected to this is the root nun. Nun represents life, seed, or word. It can indicate to sprout, to increase, therefore inferring offspring or posterity. It infers something that continues on. That in itself should be a promise, because when the enemy will do everything he can to snuff out the noon, the seed, the word of Yahweh, it's something that continues. It continually sprouts, increases, and goes forth. It can't be stopped. Amen? It's the seed, it's the word, it continues. It's a continuation of the lineage, and it also carries with it the idea of one who is an heir or son. Why? Because he's charged now with continuing on the name of the Father, the family lineage. It continues on. It's the noon. It continues to sprout and bring forth. This bow in the clouds reveals the prophetic message of a promised garment, a covering that enables us to be in the presence, literally to see and behold the Son, the Word. It's a gateway into his throne room, and to be considered that when you put on this garment, you're now considered as one who is an heir. You're a continuation of that same name, of that same authority, of that same power. In other words, you now have access to see that same word made manifest in your life, all for the purpose of enabling you to access the inheritance that was a promise to his heirs. Amen? This is the promise that Noah is shown, and it's the same promise that's reiterated to Abraham. Yet it was quite interesting and intriguing to me, because this root, anon, to bring clouds, to appear, to produce, this same root also infers to practice soothsaying, to conjure, to observe times, or divining magic. Isn't it interesting that the clouds are currently where we see the evidence of their enchantment and their magic? With their harp technology, cloud seeding, weather manipulation, lying signs and wonders, all geared towards controlling the minds of the masses. Why? Causing them to become echad with another if they're not careful, if they don't understand, if they can't see through it. Now remember, in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, the enemy, the anti-Messiah specifically, seeks to change the times. He seeks to compromise, to usurp the message revealed in the stellar clock, to manipulate the compass that would give you direction, to hinder you from having access to the voice. And it seems as if the scriptures infer that because he has access to the abode of the luminaries, he's capable of distorting that message. And we see that that message has been distorted. And yet, in the midst of his enchantment, in the midst of his magic and his incantations and everything that he's doing in order to control and manipulate the minds of the masses, Yahweh puts in the midst of that a doorway. He puts the bow in the clouds. That in the midst of the enchantment, the magic that the Nakash will attempt to pour out upon the earth, there's still access to the truth. There's still a doorway. Could it be that outside of having access to this garment, represented by the rainbow, pointing towards the creative power of the Hebrew language and the word of Yahweh, that can only be accessed by one who has a circumcised mind? Remember, Adam loses this garment the moment he compromises his standing. When his mind becomes put into a fallen condition, he no longer is clothed in this garment. This garment is only worn by one who has a circumcised mind. That outside of this garment, we would be susceptible to the lies and enchantment and counterfeit conjured up by the enemy, and therefore see our houses become desolate. And yet, he promises Noah, he promises Abraham, I put my bow in the clouds. There's still access. There's still a doorway. There's still a way for you to direct and chart the course of your house. Abraham and his seed stand in opposition to the enemy who will seek to change times. He will, in the Hebrew, it says it this way in Daniel 7:25, he will shenei zaman. He will seek to change times. In other words, usurp dominion over the message that is declared and control of the gateways. And yet, as we've been looking, we understand that we're not left without hope. The bow is in the clouds, a gateway through which you can see the word of Yahweh made manifest on your behalf in the face of the manipulation of the enemy. A gateway that can only be accessed by one who has a renewed, circumcised mind. And how many realize that while the enemy is busy manipulating the clouds, doing everything he can to bring about his agenda, the true timekeepers, Israel, become the doorway for his word, functioning as a teva, as an ark, a place of sanctuary and a refuge for all of those that would choose to come in and be a part of this in the midst of what's happening. Amen? Contrasted to the enemy's plans, it says that he seeks, he hopes, he plans, he intends to shana zaman, to change times, in order to wear out the saints. But it's quite interesting because in Daniel chapter 2, verse 21, Daniel makes this statement regarding Yahweh. It says, "And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding." It's the same wording describing what the anti-Messiah will seek to do, but instead here Daniel inserts an extra time. In Daniel 7:25, it says that the anti-Messiah will seek to change the times to Shana Zeman. Regarding Yahweh, he says it this way, Shana Eden Zeman. Times and seasons. When you break it down in the Hebrew, the word for changes, it's the word Shane. It means to change, to be altered, to be changed from the root Shana, to change, alter, repeat, to do again. It literally can infer to make a twin, to change garments, or to transfer to another place. The word for times, the one that the anti-Messiah, seemingly, he doesn't have this piece to the puzzle. This word is Strong's number 5732, Eden, meaning time, but it's the same letters that form the name Eden, the Garden of Eden, the garden of appointed times. He doesn't have access to this piece of the clock. Then seasons. Yahweh changes times and seasons. Seasons is Zeman, a set time or season, the only piece of the puzzle that the enemy can seemingly attempt to or think to manipulate. Could it be that the agreed upon location that the oath we're pointing towards is Eden, where the voice is first seen? Lucifer himself at one point had access. You see this in Ezekiel 28:13, yet he's removed. Adam loses access upon the fall. Yet the course that is charted and entrusted to Abraham is the doorway back to Eden, the garden of appointed times. This is what the Nakash, the serpent, is denied access towards. He seeks to change the Zeman, but he doesn't have access to Eden. Zeman, times, has a numerical value of 97. Eden has a value of 124. Their combined value equals 221. It's the value of Chabura, stripes. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 5, it says, with his stripes, with his Chabura, we are healed. Access to Eden is only through the Mashiach, who wears the Chabura, the stripes, the voice that was walking. Yahweh doesn't change his calendar, his appointed times, but he repeats, he replicates the message. He changes their garments, transfers the responsibility or dominion of revealing the message that was originally the role of the celestial bodies, that now the enemy attempts to compromise and distort. It's entrusted to Abraham and his seed. Abraham becomes the doorway through which the voice, the Mashiach, would come in order to restore access to Eden. Do you think this is why Daniel connects the changing of the times with removing and raising up kings and having understanding and knowledge? When you look at this in the Hebrew language, he says that Yahweh changes times and seasons and that he removes and sets up kings. The term remove is Ada. Strong's number 5709, it means to pass on. But it's from the root to pass on, to walk, to lay aside. But it can also refer to removing a garment. He sets up. He removes and he sets up. Sets up is Strong's number 6966, kum, and it means to arise, to stand, to confirm, to establish, or even to resurrect. It seems Daniel is speaking of the king, who, Adah, he takes on a garment to walk among his people And then he removes that garment as he is cum, resurrected and established on his throne for the purpose of confirming a covenant that guarantees access back to Eden. Everything the anti-Messiah is doing, everything the Nakash is attempting to do, he's attempting to gain access to Eden, yet there's the one doorway. There's only one way to enter in, and it's through the Mashiach. And Abraham is entrusted with becoming the doorway for the Mashiach to be seen on the earth. Amen? How many realize that this is what the war is over? Access to Eden. In fact, in this Torah portion, you see this played out. Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis chapter 13 are likened unto a well-watered garden. It's specifically alluding, I believe, to the Garden of Eden. It's a gateway to Eden. Why do you think the serpent seed sets up camp there? Because they understand they're attempting to usurp control of the gateway. In this Torah portion, there's a war that takes place between 9 different kings that Abraham ends up getting involved with because Lot is kidnapped. When you go back and you look, Lot, we've looked at his name countless times. We understand that it literally means a covering, inferring the fleshly covering, what should be circumcised. What's interesting is that Lot has a numerical value of 45, and it's the same value as Adam. Lot is Adam in a fallen condition. Lot is taken into bondage by the enemy, the serpent, who thinks or seeks to use him as the key to Eden, just as he did with Adam in the garden. And yet where he's failed to understand is this door can't be accessed by one in an uncircumcised condition. Lot can't grant him access to this doorway. This is why Abraham is entrusted with the covenant of circumcision. Abraham is told, you'll possess the gates. You'll possess the gates of your enemies, but it's only once you stand in this position. This will give you access to the doorway, to his throne room, and to his promise. Amen? And so we find that while the masses are susceptible to the deception, the seed of Abraham are preparing to access an inheritance. Everything that's going on today, it's smoke and mirrors. It's to confuse you. It's to get you off course. It's to cause you to link up and get involved with things that's not your set destination, that is. If you don't have ears to hear, it's easy to get off course. Yet that's why he's reminding you, I've given you these signs, I've given you these oaths. Why? To make sure that you're staying on the right path, that every time you come and you stand here in this place and this oath gives you access, you can hear the voice of Yahweh because there's an inheritance that's waiting at a set destination for the seed of Abraham. It's about restoring the authority and dominion of Adam as you become a doorway for the manifestation of his word and presence, meeting the voice, Hakol, at the set agreed upon destination. At the very beginning of creation, at the fall of Adam, the question was asked, where are you, Adam? That question is still being asked today. Where are you, Adam? And the voice is waiting for the seed of Abraham to answer. Hineni, here am I. Where are you? Hineni, here am I. Send me. Amen. Shabbat shalom.